With so many different platforms,
Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn, YouTube,
and their purposes evolving daily, navigating social media can be, well, complicated. Welcome to the Social Media Sucks podcast from Kubbco.
Social media.
Where we unpack the latest trends and help remove the suck from social media.
Hi guys, welcome back to the Social Media Sucks podcast by Kubbco. And today I have, as usual, Chris
Hey guys,
with
what's
us,
up?
and another special guest, Christopher Kjærwulf.
Thank you so much for having me.
How do you say the last name again?
Christopher Kjærwulf.
Kjærwulf.
I would
Or-
probably
That's a powerful
say Kjærwulf, but you know,
Kjærwulf. But
it
you're
is-
from Aarhus, right? So Jutland, or
I'm actually born in Copenhagen, so
that's what they say that. I'm born in Copenhagen.
Is that a lie? Is that like a
that's the
standard
thing. You just
Jutland
want to
lie?
be close to Copenhagen, but you know.
Okay, I believe you. She doesn't. I do.
But Kjærwulf is it's a weird name, and it doesn't get any easier when you go traveling. Let me put it like that.
Yeah, it's probably pretty hard. Carbonus is also hard.
Yeah.
They're like they can't spell it. They just say kubunus or
Kubunus.
a lot of people cover nuts. I get that a lot.
Carbonate.
Cover nuts, copper
that's not
nuts. I
good.
get that a
That's
lot as
cute.
well. So that's a problem. So, but welcome.
Thank you.
And who are you and what do you do?
So, who am I? So, as I said, my name is Christopher. I have worked with social media for how many years now? 6-7 years, I
Forever.
think. It feels like forever. I mean, but I got kids now, so that really does help. Making you
old?
feel a little bit older.
Yeah, exactly.
No, but I started working with social media back in 14, I think, at a Danish company called Kubbco.
Yes.
One of the
Well known.
well-known, especially in Denmark, because as they joked about, the only way that they could get a bigger market share it were if they had like 110% of the market. So
Okay.
what Kubbco did was pumps,
Yeah.
energy-efficient pumps, and they were starting to get into social media and saying, how can we not only stay in contact with our main audience, the installers, the engineers, the people that are out there putting the pumps in, and the people that are speccing a building, but also getting across with their agenda of trying to save on emissions, trying to save
Right.
water, trying to save
Sustainability
electricity.
messaging and stuff
Exactly.
like that. Yeah.
Then trying to tie all of that into social media and having
Yeah.
a conversation.
It's a tough one.
Yeah.
Especially with engineers and things like that. I think obviously nowadays everybody's on social, so you can find everybody. But there has been discussions I've had with large brands specifically like that. Like, okay, is our audience actually here, and what do they actually want to hear from us on a platform like Twitter or Instagram or whatever it is, right?
And all the way back then, I think that the platform that we focused the most on was Facebook. And it was very evident for us that the engineer community that we had actually went really well.
Yeah.
But when we were looking at installers, we just finding that key to resonate with that target audience and that platform, also because the creative that we had was like very up there. Like it always had to look like $1 million, and we had crazy graphics. And I just think that the language that we employed on those platforms just didn't resonate very well, because we were speaking in a very different way from when I have to look back, sitting from where I'm at today with the knowledge that I have. I would probably have said, okay, we have to speak in a very different way, especially as brands become more and more global. And if you go back to the Kubbco thing that I was talking about, where you're talking to so many different people at once, so many different target audiences spread over, like Kubbco was I want to say every market in the world.
Yeah.
And if you're trying to reach that many different individuals and that you don't feel comfortable changing it up and saying, okay, so if I'm talking to an installer in Denmark and talking to one in Asia and one in the US, and I'm also trying to reach the sustainability minded politicians. Well, obviously, having just one tone of voice just won't cut it.
No,
and you have to
absolutely.
figure out how to somehow have that red thread across the many different tones that you have to employ. And obviously, that's where the problem is, right? How do you come to a point where there is just an identity? But obviously, as I've talked to a lot of people about, so when I'm talking to you guys, I'm still me, but I'm obviously talking differently than when I'm with my grandparents, because I have to put on a completely different perspective with them to engage and to be in the moment.
It's
and
the same
present.
persona and the same person, but it just has to be a different tone.
Exactly.
And that's a very good way, I think, like just wrapping that up. I think those of you listening at home or on the YouTube, that if you're a brand out there and you're working for a brand, try to think of it like, okay, the brand is a human or a person, and the audience that you're with, you're going to have to change your language and change how you speak. And that's okay. Like, we can do that. And I think that's important. And I think more brands have gotten used to that now, but there's still a few that are a little bit laggard behind that haven't done that yet. So
I think that it's something where a lot of brands have to pick that up again and say, okay, we have to let loose a little bit, and especially with something like social media, where we also have a discussion about, okay, being present in the situation and the market where you're at, being mindful of the differences.
Yeah.
I mean, for a lot of years, everybody was going, oh, we have to pull back, we have to centralize, we have to have one social media team sitting at HQ that does everything. And then it's always back and forth, right? And then we go, oh, no, that doesn't work. We have to go into the markets, and then we do that
for a little bit,
something
and then
down,
bring it back in
then
again.
we bring it back.
But that's the thing with social media, is learning by doing. A lot of the good practice. I mean, you just have to do it. You have to try something out. I mean, that's the way you find out whether it's going to work or not.
Yeah, and I think also organizationally, we see this all the time, right? Yeah. Like the whole, spread it out, distribute it, and then, okay, that felt a little wrong. Let's go back in.
But even looking at something like the Danish Broadcasting Corporation, right? That if you go back, what is it, 2-3 years, every show had its own Facebook, its own Instagram, and then they just said, we got to pull it all back.
Yeah, it's too many channels to manage, right?
I actually think that when they did it, it was because that, and I might be completely wrong, and you might be right here, but I think that in the back of my head, it was at the time where politics in Denmark were a little bit, okay, so the Danish Broadcasting Corporation had too big of a budget. and then having like separate accounts with separate people managing them all across it might look a little bit like you have maybe too big budgets, right?
Yeah. It's also a thing about, what does it look like? It might not be that big budgets, but what does it actually look like, right? People go, maybe they got too much money for a organization.
But I think that appearances, we like to tell ourselves, especially the marketeers working in social, that appearances might not always mean that much. But let's talk about something like, how many likes does a page have? Yeah. People sitting around this table will probably agree that it matters less and less.
Yeah, absolutely.
But
especially on the organic social side, like.
Exactly. But if you're looking at it from the perspective of a stakeholder in another part of the business that uses these channels to maybe sell into a distributor, it might actually have a significance.
Because the vanity metric of it saying, hey, we've got 1 million followers, we're a big business.
Exactly.
Yeah, exactly.
And if you go into a new market and you say, so let's look at that, you're meeting with a new distributor and you're going in, okay, we got this beautiful product, we are on a roll, everything is going nicely, and then that distributor pulls up your Instagram and you have 500 followers.
Yeah, it affects how they perceive you. Absolutely.
Exactly. Yeah. So the point here isn't, and if we go back to the Danish broadcasting cases, appearances do matter for some stakeholders, and it's also for us to learn how do we manage those expectations and how do we go in and deal with them, because social media is just such a everybody has an opinion. Everybody in your organization has an opinion, and it's so visible for everybody, right?
Yeah.
And that means that for me as a social media manager, I really have to be mindful about how do I engage with those stakeholders internally and externally, and make sure that they feel safe in what it is that we're doing, that they're informed. Because I can't just lean back and go, so I know how it works, so they probably know as well. So there's a lot
of learning that social media managers have to do, or teaching, I should say, with the whole teams and what actually works and what doesn't. I mean, I think that's one of the hard things that we've dealt with is okay, this sort of promotional stuff is great for ads, but it's not going to work on the organic side, and it's actually not going to work that great on ads either. I mean, there's a time and place for the sort of hard sell advertising, and then there's the time and place for more brand building content wise, right? So I think that's also been where we focus a lot with our clients, is like trying to teach them a bit about that and teach their whole organization about that. And it's much more sophisticated now. When I first got in social,
completely agree that if you go back to like when Facebook started being interesting for companies, it was very much just about, hey, we have a platform where we can say something, right?
Right.
And we just said basically
Everything.
anything we wanted to say.
Yeah.
Where today it's much more about looking at what is good content in which stage of a buyer's process of getting to know a brand,
Right.
of progressing towards a conversion or hopefully a purchase down the line, right?
Yeah.
Because what's good content at each step is very, very different.
Yeah.
And I think that's one of the things where I see a lot of brands are starting to get it, that the content, you can't just do that one brand video anymore and then just massively promote it across everything.
Right.
You have to be smart about it and
And
say,
sit back and think sales are going to come in, right? Yeah.
because
not
that's
gonna
that still happens a lot, and no, it's not going to happen because it's just not relevant for me as a consumer. And
There's so much noise as well. Like just one brand film is not going to do it anymore. Like you really have to be on social. People will talk about, okay, is it too saturated and stuff? And we go the other way, but I mean, it's all every brand to each their own to decide how they want to do it. But I'm more inclined to like more content, figure out what's working, what's not, get more data, have more shots at understanding what your audience likes. And the sort of old school television style, the TVC style of like doing one brand film and hoping that that's going to do it is kind of dead, I think. Yeah.
I don't have anything to add because I just completely agree.
Yeah.
I mean,
Of course. Cool. So now you're you moved on from Dyna Audio and now you're at, where are you at now?
I'm at Hummel.
Yeah.
I've had like 8 days at Hummel so far.
So you're fully up to speed.
I know everything. I know. I have had a wonderful introduction so far, and it's a really exciting organization.
It's a great brand.
Great brand, a lot of history. I mean, coming up at 100 years.
Yeah,
most
3
people
years or so or something like
in
that.
2023. Yeah.
2023, 100 years. Wow.
And big brand here in Denmark, where I would say that it's going to be hard to find someone who doesn't know what Hummel is, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Even when you start going south of the border, we still have good brand recognition.
In Germany and other
In
places?
Germany, even if you go to something like England, if you go to France, people will, to an extent, obviously know what Hummel is.
Yeah.
But I mean, as I said, I've been there 8 days. My focus so far has really been to start creating the relationships that any social media manager needs to have to navigate a large organization. Getting to know my team. I have 3 really talented content creators that focus on their own part of the business. So Hummel is made up of sports, fashion, and kids.
Yeah.
So one person with one
With one brand
category.
or one category.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
and they just hammer out great content. And obviously we need to take a step back now and say, okay, so what do we need to do more of? What do we need to do less of? And figure out also the way that we approach channels.
Yeah.
But obviously 8 days in.
Of course. But do you have any thoughts on, any tips on how to navigate in these different platforms when you're working with the brand now? And it's a lot different from Grundfos.
So not from a Hummel perspective. I think that it's still too early for me to really go down that road. But again, if we look at how to navigate channels, I'm going to be hard pressed for that one way of going about it, because it just doesn't exist. It's very much up to the brand and where's your audience. How does your audience like to engage with you? I mean, if you're doing pumps like Grundfos, if you're doing high end
Audio
like really expensive audio equipment like Dine Audio did, or if you're doing B2C for something like Hummel, where it's selling fashionable sportswear.
Yeah.
The channel mix that you're going to have is just going to be so much different, and the way that you approach each channel is also going to be different.
Absolutely.
So for me, I think the one thing that I've always tried to do when I've started out at a business or started out at a brand and said, okay, what channels are we on, is because there's obviously trying to be there for the audience with relevant content, but there's always also that we have to have an impact on the business and saying, okay, let's start figuring out where is it that we have an impact? Where is it that we can deliver value, both short term but also long term, and try to focus there and do less well instead of doing a lot that's maybe that's just okay.
Right.
Because I think that if you start in one place and you get good, you can then take some of the learnings there and try and go into new channels, try to talk to new platforms, new audiences, and use what you've learned.
So quality instead of quantity.
Yeah, to an extent. The quality is more about the platform here, because I think, as you said, Chris, earlier, about is it too saturated right now? I think that with content, it's very different than with the platform, because if we don't push out a lot of content on the platform, we're not necessarily going to get that data and get those insights that we need to get in order to figure out what works. Because if you're just posting the same thing once a week, it's going to be so easy to say, well, it just doesn't work. Well, have you tried anything else? I mean, what basis do you have?
You need to keep experimenting in some way. Yeah,
so when we start talking content, I would actually flip it around and say, well, that's the place where every weird, crazy, stupid idea that you have, don't be afraid to go out there and push it. And especially because the market is so saturated, I mean, you really have to edit it out if we're not allowed to swear, but you really have to fuck up right?
Yeah, absolutely, because things just move fast.
I mean,
so when you do screw up, like, people are, oh, that was so stupid and bad, and then the next day they're on to somebody else's screw up, right?
Yeah.
So,
I mean, I was telling you guys about one of the videos that we did at Dine Audio that had the most views of any video that I did with the Dine Audio, where it's me looking just directly into a lens, just like awkwardly staring at people and pulling their soul out.
Give us a preview. Was that the preview?
Yeah, it was something like that, right? And no, I was going like this and then looking a little bit behind me, and then all of a sudden just changed back into the lens and just staring it down.
Just a stare down.
Exactly.
You guys at home, I'm coming for you.
And no, I actually also addressed people, so it got a little bit weird. And no, but my point here is that because we had a video that where my performance might not necessarily have been the best, it's probably one of the videos that I've learned the most about. Where
the screw-ups are where you learn.
Exactly, where we got a lot of insight into, okay, so how does the audience actually like, what way do we engage with them when should we look at them? Do they feel like, because there was a lot of people that felt that I was condescending to my guest because I was looking in the camera. It was like, obviously that was not what I was going for, but having that knowledge that, okay, can I come across as condescending, and having a conversation afterward actually taught us a lot about it. And we didn't go 180 in the other direction, because we still felt that it had some a place and some value. But definitely there was something that we could take to the next episode, right? And that's the thing, that if you don't screw up, how are you ever going to learn?
Yeah, absolutely. You have to experiment. You have to be able to fail. And if you don't, then you're never going to learn. You're just going to continue doing the same thing, status quo, right? So I firmly believe that. You were talking a little bit about platforms and trying to figure out sort of what to do on each platform. Is there anything that you've got your eye on right now in terms of platforms that you're like, this will be interesting for Hummel or for any brands, really?
I think that obviously if you look at where we're heading, I think that still YouTube is severely undervalued for a lot of brands.
There's a lot of untapped territory there.
Exactly. I think that we see some businesses that really get YouTube and it's just running with the ball, and they're going to be so difficult to catch up with. I look at something like TikTok and say, how can brands start being a more active player on that platform? And then obviously something like influencer marketing. I see that more as a platform than just another new discipline in marketing, because it is if you're smart about influencer marketing, it's just a huge platform with untapped potential, right?
Yeah, we were talking with, before the podcast, we were talking to you about our guest yesterday is Dia Madsen from PlayStation. And she was talking about how they use influencers. And I think they had a really interesting take on it, that they're only using influencers that'll work with them for free. Like true fans, like people that just want to work with PlayStation because
being the brand of,
and obviously that takes a lot to be that brand. But I think, I mean, you're obviously working for one that has fans and has people that are like very fervent about it. So
I would go out on a limb here and say that I think that almost any brand, if they put in the diligence and the time, the patience, can find those fans. I mean, even at any place I've been. I mean, I'm at Hummel now. Before Hummel, I was at, and believe me, at Hummel we have people that just love the brand and the values that we have, the karma that we're trying to put into the product and the world that we operate in. Before Hummel, I was at Stevo Systems that did software. And I mean, even a software company will have people out there in the market that just are so committed to it because that they see the value of this product. Going back to Dyn Audio, I mean, we had fans. I mean, we had hardcore audio, fans.
Audio fans.
And the same goes for Grundfos. And obviously tapping into that takes time. Is it the right thing to do for every brand? Maybe, maybe not.
Maybe not.
But for some brands, tapping into that community and opening it up as a way to create content that really resonates because it's authentic. Because a lot of,
it's not just somebody getting paid for it. It's somebody that's like, hey, I desperately want to make this for you, actually.
And if you look at something like PlayStation, I mean, for the different games, it's communities, it's culture, right? This is people that live and breathe what they play. It's just what they love to do. And when you can tap into something like that, and you can get people to do it for you and communicate, generate content, and do it authentically, you're just going to have the road into that audience is going to be so much easier than it's going to be.
It's going to feel real. It's not going to feel forced, right? And that's what I think. I think you're right when it is coming to influencer marketing, like doing it in that way where it's more organic. That's and we talked about this a few episodes ago that influencers are a bit for sale. And I think that's kind of can be, and that's kind of caused a bit of problems. But I think we're getting to a place now where, or I hope, where brands are getting a bit smarter with it. We've had the influencer marketing thing for a while, so now we're getting to a place where it's, holy man, this is the episode of problems.
It is a Halloween episode.
Artie, do you want to fix that?
Keeping.
Sorry, this is awesome.
I love it. This is just real life.
Yes, exactly. I wish you guys could see this at home, those of you listening, but we've had we've had lights turn off, we've had fruit flies flying around, we've had lights almost fall down. So it's exciting, this episode. And it's always when I'm talking. I'm going to stop talking and then we can get through this episode.
You have so good insights.
Thank you. Yes, but influencer marketing, I think it's changing. I think, like we said, like it's getting more professional.
And it's on both sides, right? It's influencers starting to realize that even when they get to a point where they have millions of followers, if they start becoming more of publishers. They have so much reach, they have so many followers, they get deals that are so big where it's just so easy to see that it's because it's good opportunity. And brands are starting to see the same thing. If they go in and partner up with those ambassadors and influencers, it's going to lose the authenticity that was just so crucial in the beginning of influencer marketing.
So it's cleaning up a lot, right? Which is good. And I think you're absolutely right when it comes to YouTube. We just see massive potential there. A lot of brands that haven't really figured it out, and it's a missed opportunity because there is such a great audience there, and you can do such great long form content that can really get people deeper into your brand than any other platform. And I think we do TikTok, we do both YouTube and TikTok content here for our clients, and I think TikTok's been just the most surprising at how much growth there is there. Where the brands that we've worked with have been able to, basically increase their followers by, and I know we talk about followers being a sort of a vanity metric, but just going from 0 to 100,000, 200,000, 300,000 followers in no time at all. And I think that's exciting.
And TikTok for me is one of those platforms where I feel, as I said, I have a kid now. I'm starting to feel old, and when I open TikTok, I feel really old. So that's one of the platforms where I know that I have a lot of picking up to do. And just from the whole, is followers a vanity metric? Obviously, followers became a vanity metric on something like Facebook because paid got into the picture, right? Yeah. Because there were so many people on there that Facebook had to curate your news feed, that you had to pay to play, basically. Yeah. And I don't know TikTok well enough and the algorithm to say if followers is the same here.
Well, followers, it's a weird one for TikTok because a lot of people don't even go to their following tab and see who are they actually following and getting content for. Most people are spending time on the For You page, which is essentially like Instagram's explore feed, right? So they're not even going to the feed of like what Instagram or Facebook would be. They're just going to explore and staying there. And I think that's, so you could say, well, then does building an audience matter so much? And I would say, no, it's actually more important to just be continually putting out content that really resonates with an audience, because that's what's going to put you into more eyeballs, not how many people follow you, right? So it's quite interesting what's going on there.
It's chicken or the egg, right?
Yeah.
Because does success come with a lot of followers or with good content? And going back, okay, so that was actually a pretty bad metaphor, because I would always say that it comes from good content, because if you continually put out good content, people are going to find you.
Yeah, but that is that way it is for TikTok, right? And I think, and you can't really buy your way into the audience so much yet. I mean, there is some secret hacks that you can do to get more audience there. So I don't know.
That's another episode.
That's another episode. We did a TikTok episode before, actually, where we talked about these things, but a Christmas gift for you guys.
Giving away secrets.
But for the most part, I mean, you are basically, put to task of coming up with good content that is maybe on trend, relatable to you and your audience and your brand. And then, you have to just keep rinse and repeat and keep doing it over and over again. So I think it's a kind of a perfect platform in that sense, because it is so democratic and who gets seen and who doesn't. Yeah. So it's quite an interesting thing. So.
But I don't think you're completely wrong about that analogy with chicken and egg, because even though you have a lot of content and great content, you still need some marketing to support that as a brand. Yeah. So it's not completely wrong. Like it's
because that goes back to the whole that it's for most of the platforms now it is pay to play, right? Even high quality content, if you don't have the right distribution strategy behind it, can end up just going to
YouTube's definitely that way for most brands, right? Like you have to have, like we release this podcast on YouTube and we need to throw paid media behind it and to get more views on it. Otherwise, I mean, our 120 followers on YouTube, it's not going to really do much for us, right? So I think that you have to have a strategy. You can't just throw it on YouTube.
But I think that the thing with something like YouTube and going into video content is that for video content, also knowing how your audience uses the different platforms and then being smart about, okay, so how do I design my video content for each one to lead that viewer to a more in-depth experience with the content? Because if you look at something, we had a platform at Dine Audio called 23, which is an on-site video hub.
Yeah, 23 is great.
But what we could see is that when we got people into our website and viewed the videos on website, I mean, it was 10 times longer that we had that viewer compared with
on a different platform.
compared with YouTube. And if you looked at then YouTube to Facebook and Facebook to Instagram, right? That starts to tell you a little bit about, okay, so how should I distribute this? How should I atomize that video to make sure that we create some interest on Instagram and we push that user through a journey where they at some point end up being interested enough to consume the full length piece. Because also pushing that user towards the website obviously gives us more data to work with. It gives us the ability to put a product in front of you or sign up in front of you, or a couple of years ago you could put a cookie and you could use that. Obviously that's harder now, right? But again, being smart with the insights that you can get from a lot of these platforms about how is it that people consume your content. Video is obviously easier because it's hard for people to see how long they spent with an article or just a written post on Facebook, right?
You don't know how far they got on it. They could have spent 20 minutes on the page, but it could have been on the first paragraph.
Exactly.
Right, yeah.
But it's a completely different game with video because a lot of the platforms tell you, okay, they spent X amount of time and the average view, and you can really use that in how you approach the production of a video, right? And even something like that we're doing here is, okay, let's make a sneak peek for Instagram and something for TikTok and something for Facebook, and then try to lead that traffic either to the pod or to YouTube for consuming full length, right?
Yeah. I think you're spot on, and I think it's great that you're at Hummel now, because I think that's also something that they'll really benefit from, that sort of mentality of, okay, how do we cut everything up? How do we put things in different platforms? How do we lead people to the website or to wherever for purchase or for deeper brand engagement? So I think you're spot on, and I think a lot of brands need to start to really take this in and start thinking about this whole ecosystem of content.
Even looking at something, as I said, I was at a brand called Kubbco Systems previously. They know their stuff in software. They do master data for like some of the world's largest brands, and they have this Connect conference. And obviously this year it had to be virtually, but they ended up doing like 40 sessions with like top thought leaders on a range of topics.
Wow.
Full length 30-minute episodes, right? Where where I was just like, oh my God, all that content. If you're smart about editing that, atomizing it, you
got years worth
of stuff, because a lot of the things that they were talking about obviously has a longevity, right? There's a lot of the theory that goes into master data that will obviously not change that much over the years, which just, you get credibility, authority, you become the thought leader on the topic. It's just incredible to see what you can do if you're willing to invest. And obviously that investment then also requires good execution and good distribution afterwards. Because if you don't have that, you're just making content for to have on one platform, and then it just goes there to slowly die.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that's, but I think it's brilliant. And I think Kubbco has been really an interesting case as well. So what are you most excited about then for Hummel then? Because you've done a lot in all these different places. And
so what I'm most excited about is that for the first time I'm at a brand where I have the full funnel.
Yeah. Okay.
So at Dine Audio, we didn't have a web shop. At Grundfos, obviously, didn't have a web shop. At Kubbco, very different way to a purchase, right? So
now you can go from straight like brand down to the middle funnel, down to the end.
That's the thing that I've been talking a lot about is figuring out the buyer's journey and how content, platform, and audience fits into that.
Yeah.
And now for the first time, I actually have the opportunity to say, okay, so a lot of the stuff that I've learned throughout the years, how can I actually put that into play into a B2C brand where we have from brand to web shop and conversion and loyalty afterward, and try and figure out how content, how understanding the platforms that we play on, how understanding the buyer's journey can come together. Yeah. That to me is super exciting.
That's nice. It's a dream scenario from I think everybody in social media, really being able to go in and see the whole thing.
Exactly.
Like we were talking with Dia yesterday about the same thing. Like she's really happy. She's been on both agency side and the other side. She's really happy to be able to take the full thing now and look at the entire picture. So I think that's really exciting.
If I look at my team, I mean, I've only been with them 8 days, but I've been so impressed. I mean, we call them business units, right, or categories, whatever you want to call. So in sports, I have a sports journalist doing content, and in the fashion one, we have she's been with the business for 5 years now. She's really deep into fashion. The team that I have right now, I'm looking at it, I can see we have the full funnel to work with, and I have an incredibly talented team of 3 people that know how to create content, that really know each of their areas really well. And it's just about finding out where is it that we can put our resources to use in the best, most impactful way, and then start showing results. Even if they're bad. I mean, trying to figure out what works, what doesn't work, how can we design this buyer's journey in the right way so we not only increase the brand perception and brand awareness in even a market like Denmark, but also abroad, and obviously use that to lead more people through a journey that ends up with them buying a product where they get really, truly happy about it and stay loyal. And how can we use that loyalty to build like a recurring, a cyclical purchase from them, right?
Right.
Yeah.
So I think one of the big questions that I have for you, and probably our audience at home or at work, wherever the hell you are, in your car, do you get free shoes?
I don't get free shoes.
That's not what I was supposed to ask. I have something else in mind.
You have something else in mind?
Yes.
Okay. So you don't get free gear?
I got some
discounts.
I got some, and obviously I haven't been there long enough to know what I'm allowed to say. So
okay,
no,
that's
obviously
that's
with
a
any
taboo
brand,
topic.
I mean, with any brand, I think that tapping into your employees, making sure that they live and breathe the brand and they wear the brand is going to be important.
Yeah.
You're not a very good ambassador.
As I said, 8 days down
You
the
didn't
road.
get your merch yet. Okay.
We were going to actually show up in all Hummel gear for this. We thought, okay, but what if he doesn't show up with all Hummel gear?
Embarrassing.
Then we're going to be like, uh-oh. So
I will say that having spent almost 5 years at Dyne Audio, the only piece of Dyne Audio gear I got was a small, one of our smallest loudspeakers, because I were in a shoot, like in a proper shoot for them, and I had to sign away my rights for everything.
Okay.
And I got a Dyne Audio speaker for that.
That's
so
nice.
I got one thing.
that's good.
But I showed up, I mean, I had Sonos at home,
Uh-oh.
and I was like, that was frowned upon.
That was not okay.
Okay.
I can
But
see that.
I always said, hey, either give me a discount or raise my pay.
Or preferably both.
Yeah.
Yeah. Good point. So, okay. So, but next time we have you on the podcast, we expect
We
you.
will,
fully decked out.
everybody in full Hummel.
Yes.
But you
Is
know
that a
what? In the
deal?
meantime, we can give you some stuff.
Oh,
yes, exactly.
social
So you can wear
media.
some.
Don't feel bad that you didn't get any merch yet. So we have something for you. We have a little care package as a thank you that you can take with you after.
that's very nice.
Tell the listeners at home what
What?
can you
Yeah,
expect.
what's in there? What am I getting?
Only one thing that would be embarrassing. So we
What is
have
the
a little branded T-shirt.
Yes,
Yeah.
Kubbco, so you can wear that.
Yes, and then some stickers.
Ooh, that's gonna be good for the laptop.
Yes,
Yeah, exactly.
And then of course
That's gonna be good for
we know you
being
have
on
kids, though.
holiday.
Exactly,
Yes.
you have kids.
Yeah,
and
but I'm
after
with
they
the
go to
in-laws. They can
sleep,
take care of the
That's
kids.
not for the laptop.
And then a
Don't do
little
one of
bit,
those.
and of course our little popular tote bag.
Social media
Perfect.
sucks. There you go. So when you're back at Hummel
I
in
can
a
show
couple
off.
weeks, you can
Yeah.
show it off. That's good. Cool. So are we going to leave this here now?
Yes, a little bit branded content. And Chris's old cat.
No,
Oh,
we're
no.
not getting in my hat. This is mine.
From the
I
personal
will say
archive.
that I look terrible with caps, so
Good.
you actually saving me a little bit by.
Take whatever.
I have
you
to
want.
wear a hat or else like I blind everybody on the show. So I try
We'll
to
cut this
hide
out.
my dome. So okay, so
I have another question.
you have another
actually.
question, not
Because
the Hummel gear
obviously you
question.
have a lot of experience working with social media. Do you have any tips for the future generation in the industry when considering going into social media as a brand?
Yeah. So two things there. If we talk about being either at home, not knowing what you want to do, but you want to work with social media, being at college, uni, thinking this is the path for me, start testing yourself, start coming up with your own concepts, start experimenting with video, with something like we're doing today, podcasting.
Right.
Dip your toes into that and know that it's probably going to be beneficial for you. Don't be afraid of messing up. I think that's one of the things that I've said to everybody that I've ever talked to about this. If you're afraid of making mistakes, that's going to haunt you because you're never going to get out of that comfort zone and learn what works, what doesn't. Be prepared to go into an industry where it constantly changes. There's always something new that you have to be... you have to keep in consideration. So instead of, for me, I'm not a specialist at all in social media. I'm not a specialist down in Facebook or Instagram. I've stayed a generalist. And that on a lot of levels is really beneficial for me, because that means that even though I'm not comfortable with TikTok yet, I have the tools, the experience to get there.
Yeah, of course.
And know that you're going to go into a discipline where it's still sometimes a struggle to convince an organization to prioritize it. That this is as much a part of your channel mix as TVC, as out of home, and to try and convince people that just because you can post whatever you want, you shouldn't, because you wouldn't do that on TVC or out of home. It is a proper channel, and we have to treat it that way. And then gear up to talk to senior managers about it in that way, and know that you have to be really good at argumenting for why is it that we shouldn't do everything, and why should we treat this as a proper channel.
I think that's solid advice. I think that's we've definitely. I wish I had that advice when I first started out, because I think there was a lot of learning.
But you learn along the way. Do you have any tips to share?
Just don't get into it.
Get out while you can.
Choose a different major now. Go into VR or something else. No, I think that my tips would be the exact same. And I think, but I think you're right. Like, you do have to make argumentation for it. You have to know what is going on here and actually fight for it, because nobody's just going to hand it to you. And that's like, I think it's like every channel in some way. You have to argument for why are we spending money here versus spending money anywhere else, right?
Exactly.
So you're going to have to fight for it. It isn't a place where, like you said, all the resources are. So you have to be scrappy. I think you have to learn, like you said, try out making your own videos, try out doing your own ads, because every brand that I've ever worked with has always been like, okay, how can we do this with a sort of a skeleton team, right? So you have to figure out how to be that guerrilla, team that just comes in and, can do stuff really quickly. And I think that's where I would say spend your time learning versus just,
And the last thing for me is definitely, I've learned throughout the years working that internal communication about what you do as a social media team, especially in large organizations, is just crucial for having confidence in the team from your colleagues, from the rest of the organization, from senior managers, because you can easily get wrapped up in this being the Wild West where everything is possible and you can just send one tweet out and see that explode. But having a focus on letting the organization know what you're doing, why you're doing it, why it's ever changing, why likes and followers might not mean as much today as it did 2 years ago or 5 years ago. Having those conversations that's gonna help you a lot, because it's gonna give you the room that you need to navigate to go out and experiment. Because you show the organization that you are keeping your eye on the ball, and there's
a lot of internal sort of stakeholder management. I think you're right. and like every role, and I think, but I do think social media has been maybe scrutinized more than others. I'm often getting this sort of like, what's the ROI of this
No, and I think
discussion? And I think that's fair, but we also push back and say, well, if you tell us what a good ROI is for you, like if they say, what's the ROI of this? And let's go the other way. Tell me, okay, what currently are you doing that's giving you great ROI? And oftentimes that's met with, well, we don't know. So then you're like, well, if you're then demanding a great ROI out of this, but not this, why is that? And then you can unpack that a bit. It's not combative. It's just like trying to figure out what's up going on.
That's another beast with social media, right? The whole metrics game, because it's so different. We were talking about the funnel before, right? And I think that social media often gets measured on, do you drive sales?
Yeah.
To drive sales, how much did you sell?
A lot of it's top of the funnel, right?
And obviously that's a part of it, because we need, as social media marketeers need to show that we can do that as well, that we can convert the audiences that we have. But I think that the rest of the organization needs to learn as much from what we do in the form of community building, brand awareness, brand perception.
Right.
And saying that's equally important, because if you just do the sales cycle where, now we have a sales event, which just spikes. Yeah. You're not going to move the lower bar that much, and building community, building brand. That's the staircase, if you will, right? Where you take a step up, and then you've taken a step up, and you can build from there.
And it is a funnel for a reason, right? And a funnel needs to have a large audience at the top to get to that sale, right? And if you think that you can just go straight to sort of
we got the spooky lights going again.
It's the lightning round.
Yes, it's the lightning round.
But if we need to answer before it stops, that's gonna be hard for me.
Beep. Yeah. It's like somebody's car alarm. Can we add that sound effect in here?
Before?
We have worked with agencies before, definitely. And I think that what we, at Dynaudio, what we had was a really core team where we had the ability to do a lot on our own. But we also worked with agencies strategically when we needed to.
Right.
So for a lot of the day-to-day, for a lot of the stuff where it was building community, doing content marketing, informing people about our industry, we could do that on our own. But obviously when we had campaigns where we had a higher creative bar to meet, we had agencies that came in and pitched different ideas. How can we improve on what we're already doing? What shouldn't we do for this campaign? We've worked with agencies, and I think that agencies, to a large extent, has a big role to play on a range of things. But I'm also very cautious about brands that go full in on agencies and don't take ownership of the process themselves, don't take ownership of social as a channel.
For sure, yeah.
Because
a large part of
it there needs to be, if you use an agency, there needs to be a partnership where you, as the brand, know your audience, you know your product, you know your organization, which is just as crucial, because if you start promising on social media, there's going to be a product that needs to live up to it. There's going to be a support team that needs to live up to it, a retail sales part that needs to live up to it as well. So understanding that audience, that part of the business is just crucial. But also knowing that for most small, medium-sized businesses, like going full in on social media is going to be very time consuming, and being smart about when to use an agency to create content, to go in and work with strategy, to help out with paid, can really be a big benefit, because you get fresh eyes on it.
Yeah, absolutely. I think you're right. And I think you're 100% correct when you say that a brand can't just lean back and let the agency take the wheel. I think that's a misstep. Right, I think it is a collaboration usually, and you have to be able to have an in-house team and an agency team that you work close with, or a bunch of agencies to do various different things. So I firmly believe in that structure, because it's also about like keeping that knowledge also close. And also most agencies don't have that full sense of like everything from top to bottom, what's working and what's not. There has to be that liaison with the brand to figure out, okay, what actually is working like. And if you don't have those sort of people in-house at the brand side, then you're kind of missing out on the sort of major benefits of social. So I 100% agree.
Should we do a little, just to sum up, like a little lightning round where we kind of summarize how social media can create the full funnel for brands? Because you guys have a lot of thoughts. I mean, it is broad, but it's
okay.
But you guys talk a lot about it. Yeah. The question is how you see social media can I don't want to say create, but fulfill the full funnel for brands.
Right. Okay, so just tips in there.
Yeah, tips.
Okay, so
you can just
on the funnel side, I think it's important to understand what content is good for which part of the funnel, like we talked about in this. So make sure that you're not trying to do sales with brand awareness campaigns, and vice versa. That would be one of my tips.
Yeah, for me, you just stole my tip. no, but I think that what especially with something like video, it's. I was talking about this earlier, but really understanding how to use it at the different stages and how to say. I remember we did a campaign at Dine Audio where we were at this really old castle, where we used that to do a really creative brand or product awareness phase. But we realized that if you just had that part of it, it wouldn't work. So when we were at location, we also made sure that we had cut downs that made sense in the next step, that got closer to the product. And
so when you're producing it, you're actually
very final step of that process, we had different video from the same place. So you had that consistency across the campaign that you were doing.
Right. So when you're creating content, think about the entire funnel.
Yeah.
I think that's a good one. I think also the other tip that I would have is like, e-commerce is so big now. Like even brands that you don't think, we can never be e-commerce. I think you can. Like I think there's so much room there now. So, in terms of the whole funnel, think about, should our brand even be e-commerce? Probably yes. Then how do we start building that funnel? Yeah. That's a tip. Over to you.
I'm
He's
just
on the hot seat now.
No, but there's another one here. Is think about what you're going at here. Is again, think about the market that you're in, because we tend to tell ourselves that, especially in the market that we live and breathe in, because that's where our HQ is, that's the whole thing, right? That's how it happens all across the world. But I mean, at Dine Audio, we saw that in China, we could sell loudspeakers that cost around 200,000 Danish kroner online. I mean, that changed the whole way we thought about selling our product at the different stages, because if you can sell a product at that price where you can't experience it because it's sound and you're buying it online, that needs to do something with your thinking. So again, what you were saying, also look at the market that you're in. How do they use the different steps in that funnel? Because that's as crucial.
It's a very good tip.
Yes.
I think that's been a good lightning round.
Really good.
Nice. Thank you.
Hope it creates some value for our listeners.
We're going to cut this part up into like a very succinct lightning round where we're going to have lighting effects. Real lighting effects. Yes.
Okay, so I think that's it for today, guys. Thank you for all the tips.
Great.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Where can people connect with you?
So I'm on almost everything. I had a TikTok when it was Musical.ly.
Yeah, I remember
and
that.
I did a couple of really stupid videos. And
it's still out there. Once it's out there, it's there forever.
I actually tried. Find it, people. Find it.
I think that it's not, because I don't think TikTok got all of the content straight from Musical.ly. Because I can't find it anymore,
you can't find it.
Which is really good.
What was your username? He's not saying.
It's always just Christopher Kaolf.
Okay.
So that's easy.
Well, you know what? Our listeners can try to find it, and then they can win a little tote bag.
If you can find Christopher's content
I did
Hit us up
this
in the
to
comments
a-
and we'll get you something.
because you had to do it to music, like, and I was acting out what they were singing, and it's bad. So if you find it, please keep it to
We
yourself.
love cringe content here. So, all right. So they can find you on TikTok and where else?
Yeah, LinkedIn, Instagram, Facebook. I have a Twitter, but I'm not very active there. I think LinkedIn and Instagram is where you would want to connect with me.
Okay, we'll put some links in the show notes and on YouTube as well, so they can connect with you. And best of luck at Hummel. I think it's going to
Thank
be
you
a
very much.
fantastic journey for you there.
And congratulations
So-
again.
Thank
Yeah,
you.
We're looking forward to seeing what you do there.
And thank you for the goodie bag.
You're
I'm
so
looking
welcome.
forward to having a glass of white wine tonight.
I guess might chill at first though. So
So thank you guys for listening.
thanks for listening, and see you guys next time.
This has been the Social Media Sucks Podcast.